Hello and welcome to Startline, brought to you by the Manx Motorcycle Club. I'm Beth Espy, and this podcast delves into the world of road racing on the Isle of Man. What does it take to take on the mountain course? From the racers and the teams to the mechanics and sponsors, it's all here on Startline. Hello and welcome to another episode of Startline. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be hearing shortly from the man behind Happy Dog Image Solutions. We heard about the hound behind the business in the last episode. Today, though, it's all about Gary Partridge, so do stay tuned for that one. But first, we've been keeping up with some of the newcomers who are taking on the Manx Grand Prix this year. And you might remember that the first newcomers weekend was in February. Well, because the weather really decided not to play ball, one of those newcomers was not able to get here. But a month later, he has made it over, and I caught up with him quickly while he was here.
So I'm Thomas Altendorfer, 28 years old, from Austria, and a newcomer at the Manx Grand Prix.
And honestly, great to see you over here. We heard from you a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, you had a bit of a nightmare for the first newcomers weekend.
Yeah, there was a big snowstorm in Austria, and all the flight got cancelled, and I didn't catch another flight to come up. And all the people from the organization, Milky, Liz, Lee, all of them were pretty kind to me and organized a second newcomers meeting 1.2. And I did my laps now, and I'm really, really happy that all of them were so kind to me.
And this is the Monday. I know you're heading home a little bit later, so you've been here since Friday. Talk us through what you've been doing this weekend.
Yeah, so on Friday the first thing after landing was doing a lap, of course, on my own, and then on Saturday in the morning I met with Milky, did a lap with Milky. After that I did 2 laps with David McDowell-Madsen. And yesterday with Darren Sluice and Jim Hunter, so a lot of good information, and I tried to process them by doing laps on my own as well, and it was really useful. And
that's the thing, I mean, there's so much information to take in, and I guess it's really good to speak to different people. They'll all pick up on different things.
Yes, and I'd always try to pick the things from each person which I can recognize the best. And every instructor has a little bit of a different angle on a corner or on some things, and I always try to pick them out which works the best for me.
One of the laps took about 3 hours?
Yeah, with Milky, so that was that was crazy, but we had to talk a lot about all the general things and like the theory of the race, and we stood at some corners and watched the corner itself, and we were talking about what's outside of the racing course. So that took a little bit longer.
Was there any lying down on the road and having a look?
No lying down, but getting on the knees and having a look, because what many people don't see is how the track goes up, down, and the camber of the road and the bankings. And that's very important here, because you can get catched out from them really quickly, and we don't have that at the European road races, and that's very good to know then.
And do you know what? I mean, everything that goes into getting you over here, all the races that you have to go to get your signatures and whatever, there's so much. And you must just be exhausted.
Yeah, right now I'm really looking forward to go racing now. I'm happy to do it. It takes a lot of time. It took a lot of money, of course, because flight cancellation and you will not get any money back. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm short on holidays, so every day has to be counted, but I'm really looking forward to learn all the things, and now it's like another kick-off point to set off and start the season.
And you know what I love you said when you came over, obviously you've been to the Ferry Bridge, you made a wish when you were over here last year, that's come true, obviously you've got your team as well. It kind of feels, I guess, like it's all fitting into place.
Yeah, as it stands now, it's working out, everything is working out perfect. Like I want to start this week, I want to test my bikes for the European road races, and then I will have a test with the Roadhouse Macau team with Brian McCormack, and then I'm looking forward to the next newcomers meeting in July.
And how much contact have you got with Brian at the moment?
I'm texting him all the time, asking him all the questions, and he's like very responsive, and he helps me out a lot, and he was also in the organization of my newcomers weekend this time, and he's helping me a lot.
And what do you do with all that information? Are you the sort of person who takes loads of notes? Do you just remember it? How are you learning?
So when I did the laps with all the instructors, I was only listening, and after that I was going home in my apartment and watching onboard videos and putting some notes on a sheet of paper, which were in my eyes important, and I just tried to put them together with the onboard so I can have them at home and picture it at home.
And you're a bit of a fan of the PlayStation game too?
Yes, for sure. But right now, the preparation of the bikes and going to the gym is more important than the PlayStation game. But I do it also to find the concentration for a little bit of a time for 2 or 3 or 4 laps, because it's not very common to have such long races. And if I have a day off or I'm sick or something like that, I always play on the PlayStation.
So just finally then, the next few weeks and months, what are they looking like for you?
Yeah, so as I said, I will go testing this week in Hungary with my own bikes. Then in April there will be my home race, the hill climb race in Landshag. And then there will be 2 road races in Czech Republic in May. And then let's see what happens until the next newcomers meeting. And of course the season highlight is the Manx Grand Prix, and I try to work as hard as possible to get there.
And remind us where people can follow you on social media.
Perfect would be Instagram, Uccio_23, or Facebook, Thomas Altendorfer.
Safe trip home, and good luck trying to get some sleep on the flight, eh?
Thank you.
Thomas Uccio Altendorfer, so good to see him over here getting those all-important laps in, and looking forward to seeing him back when he's here for the next Newcomers weekend later this year. You're listening to Startline, brought to you by the Manx Motorcycle Club. So in the last episode, we talked a little bit about Happy Dog Image Solutions and the real life dog that was the inspiration behind that business name. But what you might not know is that the man behind that company, which is based here in Derby on the Isle of Man, Gary Partridge, has got an incredible history when it comes to 3-wheel racing. And while I was up there visiting the business in Derby, he gave me an insight into this, and it's the literal highs and lows of the sport, which he clearly still loves very much indeed.
I was working as national accounts manager for a London-based company, and a friend of mine was racing solos in the British Championships, what is now British Superbikes. I think it was the Heat series at the time. So he was racing this 600 there, and I bobbed up to Alton Park, my best friend from school, and and he's there working out this old van, and and obviously on a shoestring. And I thought, we must be out to sponsor him a couple of tyres. So I had a word with my boss, and so I went up there, and said, "Oh, there's a set of tyres and whatever else." And then being in Cheshire, it started raining. And it's hoofing it down. In the back of my car, I always, for returns and whatnot, I had a big roll of bin bags, black bin bags. So all these people are stood on the bank, and it's absolutely sodding it down. So I ran back to the car, got these bin bags, started making holes in them, and I'm passing them round, right, to the crowd, right, so they sort of stay a little bit dry. And a lot of people, the solos were out, a lot of people were sort of like leaving the bank and whatever else. And then all these guys started coming up, and these girls, that looked like they were from a different planet. They were a little bit more bikery type looking. And then I saw, the first time ever, right, because I didn't have a clue, I saw one of these sidecars, a Formula One sidecar, and I watched this thing go around the corner. Well, there was a gaggle of them, because obviously they were coming out the collection area. I see these sidecars, and they look like toboggans, but with another guy on the side of it. Do you know what I mean? Like a triangular toboggan. And all this spray is coming up and whatnot. And I was just like, what the are they? And anyway, Fred said, "Oh, they're sidecars. Oh, you're getting dead well with them. They're like the gypsies of the paddock," and whatever else. And I went in, I was watching them, and honestly, I was so impressed. And I'm watching these guys jumping on the back of it and whatever. So I went into the paddock, and I'm chatting to a few sidecar crews, just saying like, how much are these? What are these? And whatever else. Do you make them yourself? Where'd you buy them from? And whatever else. Anyway, they then started telling me how much these things cost. And this was like in about 92-ish, 91, 92. And even then, it was quite a lot of money. And my heritage, I'm a little bit tight. And I'm thinking, whoa. And then one of the guys, a guy called Dave Kimberley, who I ended up riding with, years after, he sort of turned around to me and he went, "Well, if you were a passenger," and I went, "What's the passenger?" "The guy on the back. If you're the guy on the back, if you got good at it, you might even make money. Well, my ears pricked up. And I thought, oh, yeah. Well, if I make a quid. And I went, oh, really? And he went, oh, yeah. So anyway, I went back home, and a friend for a friend introduced me to a guy that I'd heard of when I was a kid, you know, being a biker in Worcester and whatnot. I'd heard of this guy, a guy called Phil Dongworth, who had a sidecar. Anyway, I got in touch with Phil, and Phil told me of a guy in Ilkeston, a guy called Fred Hancock, who had tried 6 or 7 passengers. He was just setting out as a driver, tried 6 or 7 passengers. He'd spat them all off the back, so he couldn't find a passenger. And Phil went, you know, do you fancy having a go at him then, Gow? And I went, yeah, go on then. So he arranged me to go down. I was on a Wednesday afternoon at Mallory Park, and I fitted it in between customers, you know, because I used to do national accounts. So I was doing a round robin. He had the leathers, the helmet, the whatever else. Anyway, I sort of put this gear on and whatnot. Never sat on one of these things. And anyway, there was another passenger, can't remember his name. He was telling me roughly what I needed to do, and off we set. And I did about 3 laps, and I thought, you're not going to spit me off. So, of course, having no clue, I am hanging on to this thing with my life. After about 3 laps, I can't move my hands. I was like that, trying to tap him. I couldn't move my hands, so I'm tapping him with my head. And it was like, what is going on here? And we pulled into pit lane. Anyway, he was like, oh, you're right. And I went, no, mate, I can't move my hand. And I was like, Pat Gallagher. I lifted my visor, and I went, Pat, can you take my, I couldn't undo my helmet strap. I couldn't lift my arms up to Anyway, his passenger came up to me and he said, look, you just need to relax. You need to do it and whatever else. So I'm like, okay, can we do it again then, but a little bit slower so I can just find my way around it? So we did that, and off we went. And I sort of took to it, really. He was fairly quick, but not as fast as you end up going, you know, as you go through your career. But he was fast enough, certainly to open my eyes to it. We did another session, and my arms, because they were already blown, they were still fairly secondhand. And then we rested for about an hour. We did another session, and I was like, I love this. This is mega. And then, you know, the monster is born, isn't it? I was just obsessed then. And I raced with Fred for about half a season. And then we had a few upside down moments because he was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. He was just, I talked to him about racing lines and stuff like that. And he goes, no, you just need a fast engine. I'm like, no, mate, we're not doing like drag racing and whatever. So eventually, I thought, well, the way for me to learn this is I'll just become a paddock trollop. So if anybody wanted a passenger, I just jumped on. And quite a few times, you know, we won and we crashed and we blew up or whatever else. But I just got to see a lot of riding styles. I got to sit on an awful lot of sidecars, you know. So I thought, a bit like my business career, do you know what I mean? I worked for lots and lots of companies in lots of industries, trying to learn as much as I could. So I did this. I sort of applied the same thing with sidecar racing, and I just spoke to as many people as I could. And I took the bones, because there's a lot of peddling, you know, that's pushed around the paddock. You know, you don't always get to know the truth. So I sort of took the bits that I thought were good and whatnot, but met some really, really good people that sort of guided me and helped me along the way, and then it sort of went from there, really. I started riding Formula One with a guy called Chris Hibbard. Again, guy who was looking for a passenger, who was local to me at the time. He was in Evesham, who was a mega man. Chris was a real good passenger and a real good driver, and been a real good solo rider as well. So he probably taught me more than anybody, really, you know. And he became my paddock big brother. Definitely, you know, and I just love that man. And me and Chris went and we won like a lot of club championships and whatever else. And then we were down in Pembrey one day, and we'd won the races, and there was a family called the English family, and they had a dad, Ray English. They were a lovely family, really into sidecar racing. He'd been a sidecar racer and whatever else, and he wanted his boy to race a Formula One sidecar at the European Championships, but he didn't have the money. So he sat down, he was a brilliant engineer, he sat down and he made his own LCR in a family garage. This is an 8B whatever garage, right? Made this LCR. Anyway, Ian, the rider, was looking for a passenger, and his brother Steve, who was racing for another team at the time, they came up to me and they said, do you fancy doing a European round? And I was like, oh. And this was on a 500cc two-stroke, right? These things are like a switch. Never sat on one of these. And I'm like, Well, I'm riding with Chris, and Chris went, no, we haven't got the money for you to do this. This is what a lovely man he was, right? We haven't got the money or the funding, and I want you to experience this. I know you can do this. You go and do that, and it's like at least one of us will be there. Do you know what I mean? Doing what we should be doing. And I went, oh mate. Anyway, I spoke to my boss, and I'm a little bit flat out. So I was pretty much flat out with work. I hadn't had a holiday in about 5 years. I was just like focusing on work, and then of course, then sidecar racing was starting to sort of trickle into it and whatnot. And so I spoke to my boss, and he went, can I have a sticker on the bike? And I went, yeah. And he went, right, I'll pay you to go. So I was like, happy days. So anyway, off we went. We had such a brilliant time. We've got an old caravan on this old Mercedes van. It was a proper family trip, and like we were going through the borders, and we're, Dobra Den. We still say that to each other now, Anyway, we ended up going to Most, which is like in this petrochemical town in Czechoslovakia, and like we've pulled up at this circuit. I've got this 2-stroke thing, and luckily the first session it rained. Well, they're not like a switch in the rain. They've got to just reel it on. We came in after the first session, and Ryder said to me, he said, what do you think of that? And I went, mate, too easy. I'm all over it. Just mega, And I love passengering in the wet. I think you have a little bit more to say in the wet, as a passenger. So I'm like, that was ace. Love it. And then it dried, right? So we went out with the second session. Jesus Christ. My arms, I was like an orangutan. Like my knuckles were dragging on the floor. I'm like, what is this? We did quite well in qualifying, but I was like, tap, tap, tap. Can't do this. Came in and I was broken. I was like, honestly, like, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I can do this. It's just too much for me. And there was a guy there, Peter Hill, fantastic passenger, and Tony Baker's passenger. They came to me. They could see I was sort of like, that I was a little bit upset. So they came to me and they went, what's up? And Andy Peach, he came up to me, and they all got around me, and they went, right, we're going to walk a lap of the circuit because we've all followed you. And you are a passenger in every single kink and corner, and you're just completely overworking it and blah, blah, blah. So they talked me around. They said, right, do this, do that, blah, blah. So we went out the next session, and I just did what I was told. I just found my confidence again, and then we did the race, and we finished really well, and that was good. And then I got asked to do the another round, which was in Schleiz, in the old east of Germany, but of course the wall was down then. So I went and did that, and that was such a brilliant experience. Everything about it. We rode really well together. We had a fab time, sort of starting to belong to that sort of paddock now. And I met a lot more teams like Stuart Muldoon, and Klaus Klaffenbach was there. He was running his bike out, even though he was doing the world thing. So that was really good. And then I never, it's not just the racing. It's, you're only like on the track for, say, probably 15% of the time. The rest of it is the crack that you have in the paddock. And it was one of those meetings, it was like one of the best and worst meetings. And I'll tell you what, one of the best meetings, I'm lay there 2:00 in the morning, like that, nervous. We're chatting about the race. None of us can sleep. And it's like, oh, this is a road circuit, but we're on Formula One bikes with rose joints that don't like bumps and whatever else. And even though it's quite smooth, you are aware that if something breaks, it's right turn Clyde and there's no questions given. So we lay like that. And then I can hear this oompa, oompa, oompa. I'm like, what is that? And there's a beer tent behind the sidecar paddock. So I'm like, oh, I'm not lying here. I'll get my top on. And off I can climb the fence and then go into this. Anyway, I walked into this beer tent, right? And there's all these drunken Germans, and they see me, and all I've got is just like, a polo shirt with a couple of sponsors on, but they can see that I'm a racer. So they pick me up and they're like, way, throw me up in the air, and they go, beer, drink more beer. So like you do, you have to oblige, don't you? So I'm like, this is before I was a little bit serious about it all. So I came out there about 6:00 in the morning, absolutely sozzled. We were on track at 9:00. So anyway, Don't listen to this. So anyway, we go out, and that was the first and only time I was ever ill in my helmet. I went over for a right-hander, and honestly, this is not good listening if you're having your tea. But literally, as I'm going, I can see peas and carrots dancing on the inside of my visor as we're going down the straight, thinking, I'm really not very happy at all. But we got through qualifying. I know, yeah, I'm just wrong, aren't I? We got through qualifying, cleaned the inside of my helmet. We're into qualifying 2, and there was a wonderful French team. This is why it was one of the worst, but just an eye-opening, but one of the worst meetings as well. There's a French team next to us, and at Schleitz, you go uphill from the start and finish, and there's like a stadium, and then there's a left-right chicane, and you're tramping on into this first left. And on the old Formula One sidecars, as a passenger, you would stay in on the braking on the left. If you got out for the left, then you would have like what you call like a pendulum effect, and it would whoosh, 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 and then come back on itself. And we're behind these guys, and I had a little bit of a peep because I'm still getting, to know the circuit. I had a little bit of a peep up, and I can see the passenger out for the left, and I just thought, ugh. And I remember going into this corner, and they just had, it's like East Germany. There's just bales there of hay and stuff. Not like the TT now, with the safety that these boys put in there. And it just went poof, and this thing just like exploded and whatever else. Unfortunately, none of them came out of that. So that was the first experience where we were next to a team, and you experienced the zip being down and the silence. And, the whole atmosphere changed, within the paddock and whatever else. And then you're trying to put that behind you. And I remember being on the start line and lifting the driver's visor. And we had like a 3-minute silence on the grid through respect and whatever else. But we're there to show that the show goes on, because it does. The show goes on. And what they were doing wasn't wrong and so on. And we're sort of racing with them in mind. So you sort of, you use that as motivation, and that's how I was looking at it anyway. And I remember lifting his visor and going, right, everybody now is going to be thinking about them boys. I want you to ride harder and faster than you've ever ridden. And I turned it round that way, and we had a real good result. I think we finished third or fourth. It was a real good race and whatever else. So we sort of did them proud and whatnot. And then from there, I got offered a ride from another team, Roger Lovelock, and we had such a crack. We did the European Championships together, and we were setting poles and all sorts. Got to Misano, we'd set pole, got to Misano. We were racing, we were on 2 strokes, we're racing 4 strokes. And this is when Misano was anti-clockwise, so it was mega for us, lots of lefts and stuff, And I remember going down the straight, and I could see this 4-stroke that we were coming to lap had sort of like pooped itself. You could see this line of shiny oil, and I just thinking, oh my God. Roger got off the oil, and then we're in race mode. So he's in auto, second lap, no oil flags. So nothing to remind him. We hit the oil. We're doing like 165, 170 mile an hour. We ended up hitting the Armco and all sorts of carry on. And I ended up like breaking my back, shattering my coccyx, breaking legs and ribs and arms. And I was just secondhand, So then I got to experience the pelvis, which is never a good thing to break. You break your pelvis, then something goes on down there. And I remember being in this Italian hospital, no pain relief. So I was in this Italian hospital, and of course there's a language problem. And this Italian doctor pulled down my underpants. They're looking, sorry about the language. He just went, he shit. And I went, are you joking? And he must have seen the only bit of blood that was in my face drained from my face. And I went, what shit? And he went, no. He could see him with the alarm. He's mad. And this is still something, when I speak to Roger Lovelock, which I do, when I speak to Rog, this is something that we sort of, we'll sort of retort this story, and others as well, or it's just a little phrase that where they came on. Anyway, so I'm broken, and I ended up coming back to the UK on the back of the race truck, because I got no pain relief. I'm in this corridor, and it's very hot and whatnot, and I just rang the team and said, get me out of here. So they put me on the back of the race truck, and we came back. I got to Switzerland, And I thought, oh, they do euthanasia here, don't they? I was so secondhand. And I thought, I just can't cope with this anymore. Anyway, we got back to the UK, and then I went to see Brian Simpson. He did a load of this, like bone welding and whatever. It's not welding, but like all this. So like 3.5 weeks later, I met him down at Brands Hatch. He gave me 21 painkilling injections, like all over the place, made me a special boot, and we went again. I got on the back of the bike.
3 weeks later?
Yeah. Got on the back. Well, the thing is, at Grand Prix, which is, where we were going and where we were racing at the time, at Grand Prix, you've got all these crowd that are sat there, but no real entertainment as such of an evening. So our team manager at the time, a guy called Duffy, his brother was playing for a band called Hawkwind. So I spoke to him, right, at his wedding. We're having the crack. I spoke to him and I went, Rock and Race Tour. How about you come along to the Grand Prix, or even just selected Grand Prix that you could tie into your European tour? Do you know what I mean? And I'm telling him about the crowds at like Assen. We raced at Assen over the weekend. This was at the Grand Prix. There was 280,000 people went through that gate, which is just, I know the TT's busy, but I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I thought, all them people, and I can do the T-shirts like you do. Make a quid. So I'd arranged for the BBC, Thames BBC, to meet us at Brands Hatch, and the band come down and all this sort of carry on. And then I just thought, well, I can't not ride. Do you know what I mean? I need to be there. I need to be riding. So I went down and we rode. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a moment on the grass and the little boot got broken and my legs started flapping around, but that's another story. So we had to find a replacement passenger and whatnot. And then we got it all filmed. And I remember saying to the guy, I said, is this going to be on? Is it going to be televised? Because I was going to make sure the FIM saw it and, really push for it. And he said, as long as the Queen doesn't die, that will be on telly. Well, the Queen didn't die, but Lady Diana did. So anyway, I then didn't know what I was going to do. The girl that I was with at the time, she was a little bit like, mate, you're lucky you're still here, after those sort of injuries. So she was like, I think you need to retire and all this sort of carry on. So I sort of sat back and I wasn't too sure. And I spoke to my rider and I said, I think you might need to get Chris Hibbard, stage right, enter Chris Hibbard again, get him on as a passenger, because I'm really not too sure what I'm doing. And then after a few weeks and I started healing a little bit, I thought, now I need to be doing this. Do you know what I mean? I can't let it beat me. So I then spoke to Roger Lovelock, the rider, and said, mate, we're ready to go. He said, I've already spoke to Chris. And I thought, well, I can't let Chris down. Fortuitously, I then got a phone call from a guy called Ian Guy, who's a fantastic driver, smooth as. He was buying the bike from the Goodle brothers, Paul and Charlie Goodle, which was a Swiss Auto, an engine that was developed by Rolf Biland. And we're going to go and do Grand Prix. And I knew him from doing Europeans and whatnot. And he'd done the odd wild card. And he had the Royal Mail sponsorship. It's very corporate. And I thought, I can get my teeth into this, And he's a lovely guy. We got on really well. We did a lot of laughing in the paddock together anyway. So I thought, yeah, I'll have this. I've got to do it. So I then jumped on with Ian and we went off and we did what was the final year for the sidecars with the FIM Grand Prix. We qualified really well. We could never get the thing off the line, but we were really up at the sharp end. We did really well. We had a wonderful season. We did an awful lot of laughing. We had a very small team, but it was a real strong team, and that was fab. And then after that, the sidecars were being moved to the Flamini group with the World Superbikes, which is really exciting, and going 4-stroke and all that sort of carry on. So then I got to sort of do that, but I did that with an Australian team. Initially, a guy called Shane Suter, who's just mega. But that was good because it was just getting frosty. I got a phone call from their team manager. I'm sat in Whitchurch. I was renovating my sister's house for whatever reason. Well, I was doing it. I was going into France and I was getting these old. So we're going off again, aren't we? These double-ended French, these double-ended French baths. They were using them for feeders and in fields and stuff like that. So I was knocking on farmers' doors with these water butts and going,
in French?
Yeah, mais oui, bonjour. I was saying, no, I don't really speak, but yeah, bonjour, monsieur. I have a water butt. I will swap it for your bath. Have you got the legs? So I was emptying my van of these things, filling my van with these French baths, taking them back to Dover. re-enameling them, painting Union Jacks and all sorts, on the side of them and doing different designs and whatnot, getting the feet chromed and, and also, and then I was taken up to London because this was before, there were these new ones being made, in Italy and whatnot. And I was making £1, as you do. so that was good. So where were we?
I don't even know, honestly. So you were with that Australian team. I mean, you are obviously here in the Isle of Man. This is your home now. How did you come to be here, Gary?
Right. Well, I'd sort of finished I ran out of things to sell with the World Series. We finished 5th in my final year. And obviously I started it because I wanted to be world champion. When you're world champion, you are the best at that time on that day. And that's pretty much. But I thought for one day to be the best in the world in something would be mega. So I sort of put everything into it. I sold my house, bought a boat, lived on the boat, sold the boat, sold my bikes, I sold everything. I've got nothing. And I thought, I've got to finish this now. The obsession needs to end. So I sort of like retired. And then Chris Hibbert again. I speak to him on the phone. He was living on the island at the time and he'd done the TT and whatnot. So I spoke to Chris and I went, I'm done, mate. I've got nothing else, I am done with it now. And he went, oh, you can't retire. And I went, yeah, I can, mate. And he went, no, you can't. You got to come and do the TT. To which my answer was, no, mate, I'm not doing the TT because I was about Grand Prix and not that, silk smooth, not roads particularly. And he went, no, seriously, just come over the weekend. So I jumped on a boat, got off the boat. Next day, we set off down Bray Hill. And that's when you were going into Courtmaid, it was really bumpy and, it's lovely and smooth now there, but it was really, really bumpy. Anyway, I turned to him and I went, so where does it start then? And he went, mate, you're on it. And I'm like, you are joking. And we're getting rattled round in his van. Anyway, we got to Kirkmichael and it was raining because we're in the Isle of Man. We got to Kirkmichael and I could see the line through Kirkmichael and I went, what's this? And he went, this is flat out. And I went, mate, I got to do this. I got to have a go at this. So I then spoke to a rider, Simon Neary, who was 19 at the time. Young, dumb, full of it all. Anyway, I spoke to Simon Neary and he was looking for a passenger. And I, yeah, you doing TT? And he went, yeah. So we came over here as newcomers. We did a few rides together, did really well, just like Emma and British Championships and stuff like that. But we were at the sharp end, which is mega. Real attacking driver. We came here, this is when Nick Crow was a newcomer as well, but obviously he'd done it as a passenger. So we were sort of battling with him, although we were like 4 mile an hour slower than Nick. But we just, honestly, the first lap, this was when you could go in the rain and the snow and we just went down Bray Hill. So they set us off and it was a little bit damp when we left Douglas. We got to Kirkmichael and they pulled us over and they said, if you want, you can go back, because you're going to be aquaplaning through here. It was absolutely tipping it down. Anyway, me and Simon had been over here doing laps and whatnot. And he turned to me and, what do you think? And I went, it's Kirkmichael's flat out, mate. So I just requoted Chris. Anyway, we went through Kirkmichael. You know where the bank is there? We went through there flat out. What a wonderful moment. And Gary Horsepole and Kevin Lee, they pulled over and they were on the car park there, the bank car park, just sat there watching us. We went past them absolutely sideways, flat out, right? And I've got my thumb in the air as we went past. And then we got to Ramsey, it was sunny. Then we went up the top and it was misty and a bit of hail. This is all in the first lap. It's like we've got every single bit of weather, in one lap. And I was like, what is this place? And then it's thick fog. We're behind Dave Molyneux and Tony Baker, and Simon's looking at me, and we're in Kevlars at the time. I was selling Kevlars into the paddock like you do. And so we're wearing Kevlars and they're a little bit cold. They're great when it's warm, but when it's cold, you're cold. So you got like these overall things on. And we're sort of like starting to shake, we're freezing. And Simon's looking at me and he's like shrugging and I just went, just go. So I'm just like pointing him to sort of kick on. We dropped it down 2 gears, went past all these all these seasoned TT veterans. We went past them. And then I remember going into the veranda and thinking, I'm sure there's a left here. Because when we'd come over fortuitously, we'd come over doing laps, it'd been foggy. So we sort of knew our way in the fog, which sounds a bit bizarre. So and I thought, I know there's a left. So I'm out left anyway. luckily enough. Anyway, we took off. We landed in the car park thing, and all I could see is white, the big bales. So we brushed up against them, hit a bit of the tram track, got ourselves back on it. Molly and Tony Baker went past us, got ourselves back onto the course, and then we just sat behind them until we come in. Anyway, Tony Baker came up to me and he was like, "Get off him now, you're going to die," and all this. And I'm like, no, it'd be fine. It'd be fine. Anyway, we ended up having a wonderful practice week. The paddock atmosphere was mega. I mean, it was a different atmosphere that I'd experienced at club or any of the world paddocks I'd been in. And I think because the TT is so, you never really know what's going to happen next. Like the solos and the sidecars, everybody's talking, everybody's helping each other. It was just, the camaraderie wasn't just within the sidecar paddock, it was in the whole paddock. And I love that. Just a happy, smiley place is always the best place to be, isn't it? So I sort of fell in love with not just the TT course, but also the TT paddock and the organisers, and everything was just like, I just thought this, after that first lap, I knew. I think you either do your first lap of the TT and you're on the next boat and you don't come here again unless you're spectating, or you're knackered, you're in it, and that's you, So that resurged my racing career, if you know what I mean. I fell back in love with sidecars and sidecar racing, and I just thought, this is my future. At the same time, on the second race, we did all right in the first race, fastest newcomers, hurrah, and all that. And then in the second race, we went into the gooseneck flat out in fifth, which is not really that advisable. And normally, like if we were at Mannery Park, we'd sort of drift it on the grass a little bit, the chair wheel, and we'd carry on. There's a little bit of stone behind that little bit of grass, so that was a bit of a no-brainer. So then I got a helicopter ride, which was another experience. So I got a ride to the Old Nobles Hospital in a helicopter. Now that's the way to get a fast lap. So that was good. Then another sort of part of the experience. So I had it all really within the first year. Somehow we managed to get best newcomers, even though we didn't finish the second race. So that was quite a coup, and whatnot. And then it was all about the TT for me. So I rode with a guy called Steve Coombs for Dave Husworth Carpets. That was good. Greg Lambert Racing, still out there now, number 69. So I rode with Greg. We just blew up. Me and Coombsy just blew up. I think we finished one race on 3 cylinders with, we would be black flag these days, with a bale of smoke behind us, right? This on a Kawasaki. We'd done 5 engines. Every time we came in, we were rebuilding engines in the mud down at the bottom field. It just lashed it down for the whole fortnight. It was just one of those TTs. And we just, we should have got the knobhead of the year award, really. So we finished on 3 cylinders at 89 mile an hour average, right? I was tapping him, going, just pull over. One of those days when you can never have a dark enough visor. It was one of them, really, like trying to unpick the name off the back of my levers as we go in, thinking, no, it's not me. And anyway, yeah, we were at the presentation and they gave us like a finishers award, which I think is in the bin or something. They gave me this finishers award, and he was like, yeah, I had to finish, I made sure you got your slowest finish and all this sort of carrying. I'm going, yeah, mate, if you look in the record books, there's a 50cc solo that's gone quicker than us. You know what I mean? How do you feel about that? But so me and Steve, we went in different directions, and then I was riding with, I got a chance to ride with Phil Dongworth, the guy who actually brought me into it. So, the whole circle. But in the meantime, I'd lived with Phil and his family in the cellar. I was in the attic. Poor old Treese, his wife. I was in the attic, and then Stu Castles was the cellar dweller. We moved him into the cellar. So it was like a sidecar house, We had such a fab time, and whatnot. So Phil, always said, oh, one day me and you can do a TT go. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, you're not fast enough. When, of course, he clearly was. Anyway, it came when he asked me, would I ride with him, which I sort of just snatched his hands off, really. And I knew that Steve already had a passenger sort of in the wings. I knew there was someone that he could, he'd sort of tested with. So it was an easy decision to make. And then me and Phil went off and we did like British Championships and did really well. And beat like, the Birchall brothers and all that down at Brands Hatch, which was like, ha ha ha. Because we were just like a little privateer team, it was like, a couple of heads on top of the, the BSB paddock, like, what is this all about? And then we came to the TT, and yeah, we had a few issues during practice week, which we got over with. And then we had a fantastic race, and managed to finish second, which was mega, second to Molly. And then in the second race, we put in what would have been our quickest engine, and we were more on pace there. I think we were, Nick Crow was leading. On corrected time, we were about half a second in front of Molly, and then there was a big gap with Simon Neary and John Holden and whatever else behind us. And then Nick had his accident, which we sort of came on, which was most, I love Nick. And Coxey, his passenger at the time. I've known Coxey for forever. So, and the crack that me and Nick Crow, if you know Nick, he's the devil. There's a devil in him, but he's so funny, and he's such a good sport. So, I literally cried with laughter with that man within the paddock, and to see them in the road and whatever else, that was just, it was like the highs and the lows of the TT, isn't it? It was like a plane crash, really. It was bizarre. And then a couple of hundred yards down the road, I could see Coxey, in the fetal position on the grass, and it's like, what is this? Anyway, sadly that race never got re-ran, which was a shame, really, because I think we would have won that. I'm pretty sure we would have won that, to be honest, because Phil had the fire in his body. We were full confident and whatnot. And then we weren't going to do the Southern 100. And then I got a call from Greg Lambert. He was looking for a passenger. And I spoke to Phil, and I went, we're not doing the Southern. Greg needs a victim. I'm sort of booked on anyway, do you fancy that? So I jumped on with Greg. I've ridden with him before, and we have a good crack, we have a good bond and whatnot. So I came over, and then Phil was like, oh, I might do this Southern. I'm like, yeah, but I've already said so. But his old passenger, who'd also spanned for us over at the TT, Stu Castles, he said, well, because me and Phil had already done the Southern 100 together previously. He said, well, do you mind if I put Stewie on? And I went, no, mate, we'll still have a crack, And we had British Superbikes to do literally the weekend after at Mallory Park, and a load of testing and all sorts of stuff. A new bike coming from Trev Iverson. So, we were very much, together, and a strong enough partnership where we didn't have to worry about that territorial stuff, And sadly, during the practice, Phil had an accident, and let's not even go. I don't even want to talk about that, to be honest. So that was another real low, And then I remember Steve Coombs was riding there, and he'd had a bit of a crash there, but he needed a victim for the BSB at Mallory. So Coombs, he spoke to me, and he went, "You're getting on, Gal, then we'll do it for Phil." And I went, how can I say no? So of course, yeah. So we went and did that. His chassis was bent and whatever else. Keith Walters said, use my bike. Just put your engine in. So we went to Mallory Park with two bikes, took the engine out of one. We spent all night fitting it, and then it hoofed it down, and the meeting got abandoned. So we never had to go to ride, but we had a good crack, and, we had lots of tears and lots of laughter about Phil, so it was a good thing. And then I was on the way home, and I got a phone call from Molly. Did I want to ride the TT and with the Kawasaki ride and whatever else? So we went down that road together. We never got to actually ride together, but we, built the team and whatever else. And then I was on with Gaz Bryan, and we got some fourths, and then stupid little incident at Mallory Park where we were on the warm-up lap, would you believe? We changed the gear in, hadn't pumped the brakes back, going into Edwina's, fairly flat out, hit the brakes, and it just turned into like a jello. It was just biting and whatever else. Anyway, spit me out. Well, I was in while it was upside down, but eventually, I left of no further assistance. As was on the side of the track, they put the jump leads on him, and it was all a little bit dramatic and whatnot. And then I was still trying to get fit and trying to ride and whatnot. After collarbone and reconstructive surgery on that. I had some internal injuries I didn't know about. Came back to the TT, felt a little bit sick, went home, saw my surgeon. And he went, mate, you need to come in. 7 operations later, and it was obvious that I was never going to be right again. So then I had to call an end to the TT career, and then since then I've really just been focusing. This is a long story, isn't it? Sorry, I've just been focused. Sorry about that. You'll edit this, won't you? Just knock it all out. Like, what's he on about?
Do you know that you can't? I mean, I just think it's an incredible insight, isn't it? Into, I mean, you mentioned just how many of the things that have happened have been almost like happy accidents and the right people at the right time. And yet you are still part of this world. You're an integral part of this world. And it's clear just how much you love it.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to, even now, I think I'm busy enough TT that I don't have to miss it. Because the first few years was like, especially when I was here, I mean, I wouldn't go to the paddock. It was like, I'm not going there. Because, I've always been the same. I'd be like, nah, get out of the way, I'll have a go. Do you know what I mean? So I sort of steer away from the paddock as such. But I think even now, if autopsy time, when they sort of cut me in half, there will be a sidecar somewhere within there. Do you know what I mean? It's not as prominent as it was. It's not as important as it was. But certainly the people in the paddock, they're as important as they have ever been within my life. And doing what I'm doing now, like when I was riding, I would be helping one team. So doing what we're doing now, I can help lots and lots of teams. So that's a positive. Do you know what I mean? And you have to take the positives, don't you? And I always said, I remember when I first started riding, there was an old boy in the paddock who used to race Grand Prix, and he was like, spanning over this rusty old, looked like a bit of a garden gate really, with an engine strapped to it and 3 wheels. And the guy Andy Barwell, who I went to help the first time I saw sidecars, I'm in the paddock with him, and he went, see that bloke there? And I went, oh yeah. He went, that's you, that is. I went, you what? And he went, well, not now, but in 20 years' time, that's you, that is. And I said, I'll tell you now, right? I'm only doing this for one reason, just to see how far I can push it. And if I can't do it, if I can't go quicker, or if I can't do it at the speed that I want to do it, I will not be the has-been that, we used to. I don't want to be the used to bloke. You know what I mean? I'd rather be the has-been that never did or didn't quite than some old broken bloke just spannering over a rusty old gate. It's not my thing, you know what I mean? So I knew that there would be an end to it, at some point. And to be honest, Kurt Voltersberg, Bilan's passenger, he was great inspiration, and I sort of stylized my style of passengering on Formula One. I sort of stylized it on him. He was very much over the bike, and like at one point I was putting like knee sliders with like sparky bits of metal on the top of my helmet, so when I went over the right, the sparks would come, and all that, just a little bit of drama. And he retired at 44, so I always thought, 44, I'm done, because I saw that as a good point. And I went way beyond that. I can't remember how old I was. I don't even know how old I am now. But I went beyond. I remember getting 44 and thinking, nah, I'm not stopping. I'm going to do the TT. It's years, isn't it? So I did more than I ever thought I would do. I did more at a higher level than I ever thought. I achieved more than I ever thought I would. So I think you've got to be happy with that, haven't you? And now I am equally loving life. My obsession has moved from freewheels to the hound. It's all about the hound now, so I'm more than happy with where I am.
It is all about the hound, but it is also about Gary Partridge as well. And what a journey so far. And I'm pretty sure there are more stories he could have shared with us. There is undoubtedly another episode to come from Gary in the future. Once again, I'll put the details for Happy Dog on the podcast page, so do give them a follow and get in touch if you've got any ideas that you want printing on pretty much anything. I reckon Gary could do anything. That is all for this episode. Thank you so much for your company, and the Manx Motorcycle Club for their support. Do give Startline a follow on Facebook and Instagram, and in the next episode I'm going to be finding out what it takes to be a scrutineer, and actually what the scrutineering process is like at the various racing events here on the Isle of Man. So until then, take care. Bye-bye. Well, thank you very much indeed for listening to this episode of Startline. Do take some time to find the riders on social media. Your support is very much appreciated. And if you'd like to get in touch with me and be part of the podcast in the future, you can email beth@startline.im. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.